I'm trying to think of other like notable baseball drunks, but I can't. Like Babe Ruth, obviously, right? He
Ty
was
Cobb.
Ty Cobb. Yeah. You know what's funny? You don't see too much Ty Cobb merch out there.
Yeah, no, because typically the total jerks don't really get much. Like you don't see much Barry Bonds
Oh,
stuff anymore.
well, yeah. But I think he was more sullied by steroids than he was by being a
Still
jerk.
should be in Hall of Fame. That's my story. That's why I'm sticking to it.
What about other players who were like tangentially touched? But like, what about like Manny Ramirez? Does he deserve the
Yep.
Hall of Fame?
Yep. Manny
Manny
should
should
get
go.
in there. Palmero should be in there. Alex Rodriguez should be in there.
What about?
Um,
I guess Clemens is already in, right?
nope. Clemens
No,
should be in
Clemens is
there.
not it. Clemens.
Nope.
Clemens definitely.
All those guys should be in there because they were the best players in their generation. And
It's true.
you can't tell me that some 25th man on the roster wasn't using steroids because
It's
they
true.
don't know. The only reason these guys were pegged out because they were the best and they happened to be using, but you can't tell me who was or was not using during that era. And you don't know, so you take
Yeah,
it
I
as
mean
history
that
and
and
you
like
pick players who
how do
should.
you expect like obviously you have professional athletes that are going to be the most competitive people that you can find because they were competitive enough to make it that far. They did everything they had to do to compete to make it to that level. Like how do you expect them not to go those extra steps to
Right.
compete? Like how do you how do you
and
dangle that carrot? Like here's professional sports
and
for
it's
you,
and
and
it's not
like
like it was against the rules, right?
no, no. But letting like you can't tell me how much that happened either. Like if someone got HGH or some Tren or Clen or Anavar on a like for a couple weeks or for a month, that doesn't change the trajectory of their career.
Yeah, but I mean baseball is,
That doesn't
they,
give you a good curveball.
they're so focused on the numbers, right? Oh, and that's how we compare eras and stuff like that. But I mean, how can you really compare Babe Ruth drunk, if he actually was able to work out the way that they were able to train nowadays, right?
I
So
can confirm that being drunk gives you superpowers.
in
I
your
got this
mind,
job hammered.
well, it's because Brent got you hammered. I mean, that's
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 true.
part of the
That's
problem.
true. He was pretty nice about that. I did enjoy that about him.
He hasn't gotten me hammered yet, and there's been many of opportunity. Many glasses of wine have been stacked in front of me, and still not hammered. I think you
It's
drank
true
half of those glasses of wine.
because you just don't drink them. It's not like Brent hasn't tried. You just don't
No,
drink
I,
them.
I mean,
You get that one eye that kind of goes this way, and you start handing the glasses to other people. You're
I
like,
do my taste,
can't do
right?
this.
Like take a couple bites of food, get my taste of the wine. I'm good. I like that one. That could stay. The rest is more like trophies.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, let me hide management studio so I'm not
Yeah,
tempted to.
dude. 12:15.
Oh, I know we
Let's
should
get
get
this
started.
done.
Let's do this. All
MC
right.
Hammer style. Let's get started.
We should. All right. Oh, Richie, I think this is one that you'll like. Platform as a service, pros and cons. Because you like
Oh,
cloud stuff a lot more than I do. You like things that
I
happen
do.
in the cloud a lot more than I like things that happen in the cloud. I'm annoyed with the cloud constantly.
I do. And if you're coming from on-prem to cloud, you probably will be annoyed as well. There's a lot of things in. I haven't really played a ton with Azure SQL, but
Mhm.
just a little bit that I have played with it. There's a lot of stuff like, well, why isn't that there, and why isn't that there, and why isn't
Yeah,
that there?
yeah.
Um,
There's a lot of our stored procs that just won't work up there because
yeah,
certain features and certain system views aren't it. Like we can't use Blitz cache up there because you can't use a global temp table.
yeah,
I don't know what you expect me to tell you about anything else.
yeah,
Like it's almost
and
like
and but the same thing is true when you code for the cloud as well. The way that you would program is significantly different if I were to just write, a typical server application. So there's plus and minuses for both sides. I don't have everything in the top of my head other than you're going to need to try it for yourself. What is going? Oh, look what. Okay, I thought it was actually Brent Ozar coming on.
oh,
This is
Sorry.
better, but this is better. I started getting scared there for a second. But yeah, but pass is you're going to have to try it out along with your requirements, and and see if it will work for your environment and your application that you're building.
Yeah, I mean that, past changes a lot. Like Microsoft just pulls things in and takes things out. CLR got yanked out very unceremoniously.
Yeah.
Recently,
Yeah.
because they discovered
and we're gonna
there
put it
was-
back, and
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, they discovered that there was security issues with letting people use CLR up in Azure, and then they were just like, oh wait, you can't do that. All this stuff you want is gone. So
Yep.
all that CLR just got pulled out, and there wasn't any like case by case like, oh, you can use it and you can, like, you're special. Like it was just like, no, it's no CLR. Figure it out. So
Yeah,
pros and
can
cons. Con is you control nothing.
Yeah.
You just have to okay.
Yeah, I could definitely see them say, hey, you know what? There's the benefits for this feature really doesn't outweigh the security concerns that we have. And really, who's complaining about I don't have CLR in SQL Azure? So we're probably just not going to put any resources on fixing this thing. It's just we'll just rip it and we'll just tell people it'll be back at some point and see who complains the loudest. And frankly, I don't see hardly anybody really complaining that I don't have the .NET CLR inside of SQL Azure. So, and now that we have something like Lambda functions, I can, once they start getting better integration with Azure SQL and Lambda functions, now I could write Python, or I could write F# or I could write C# or JavaScript or whatever, and have that interact with my SQL. So, hey, functional languages, man, it's all the new hotness.
I want someone to hit the bell on that every time Richie says F#.
Hey, functional language. It's all the new hotness, man. All the cool kids are doing all the functional languages.
Never heard you say F# before, like without it being derogatory.
I'm not going to talk bad about F#. The folks who know how to wield that broadsword are amazing. You do a lot of cool stuff with it.
Huh. Interesting.
Yep.
All right. Let's see here. Ron, I'm sorry, I don't get that question. Tara, do you want to? There's a question there from a fellow named Ron. It make more sense to you. It didn't make sense. Something about hiding a thing, and it kind of went by me. JH does ask though, what resources get used mostly when issuing alter table and update statements? CPU, disk, memory. Jeez, what resources get used most? Well, certain alter table things don't use all that much resource. Like if you alter a table and you add a column that's nullable and you don't have a default in there, it's pretty quick. It doesn't really use much resource. For updates, well, depends on the query. If you have a totally unindexed query and you let that run, it's going to use a whole lot of everything. So then it has to, first run that query, read a bunch of pages, figure a bunch of stuff out, then write all that stuff, and then internally SQL figures out if it can just do an in-place update or if it has to do an insert and a delete and all this other stuff. So I mean, you're looking at a bunch of resources depending on how well optimized the queries and indexes are to begin with. If you have, and if you're updating a column that is in 50 indexes, you're going to do a lot more work for writing and whatnot than if you update a column that's in 5 indexes. So that question's a little weird, but all right. I see why you didn't want to put that on Stack Exchange. You would have gotten downvoted into oblivion.
Oh no, but why would anybody do that? An honest question on Stack Exchange?
Well, honest is different from good. Honest and good are two totally different things.
I see how you've backed away very quickly from the in-memory OLTP question. That was pretty amazing there.
Well, because the person left. I'm not going to ask a question if someone left.
They leave, but they ask a question, say, "Hey, I'm gonna actually watch this later." Maybe.
Maybe, but they didn't say, "Hey, I gotta go. Sorry, I just gotta." Someone has left.
And then again, in-memory OLTP, it makes him freak out, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. So I was honest with my wife about the fact that I spent $400 on a bottle of Yamazaki 18, but that was not good. So it's honest and good. Two different things. I didn't mean to insult your question. I just wanted to draw my boundaries between honest and good.
I'm so sorry. that you spent that much money on the bottle. I'm sorry for that.
Oh no, it's one of those like I put it in my little bar cart and I just say that I have it. I don't let anyone touch it.
The precious.
Yeah, it's one of those, white whale holy grail things that you get. Of course, I say that about a lot of different bottles of scotch, and then they end up gone pretty quick. What can you do? Let's see. We have a parameter sniffing issue in some store procedures, but not an issue in other store procedures. Any ideas? Right? The store procedures where you have the parameter sniffing problems, just like the ones where you don't have them, and then they'll go away. That sound about right, Tara?
No.
No, you shouldn't. What would you do if some of your store procedures had parameter sniffing?
So I would see what the problem is. Compare the execution plans. Is it an optimization? Is it optimizing for a value that isn't representative of the other values? I was working with a client this week that is having sort of a parameter sniffing issue between two servers. And it's just, one server selecting a clustered index scan, the other one selecting non-clustered index seek. And, using index hints has worked around the problem, but doesn't necessarily solve, doesn't tell us what the root cause is. So anyway, to answer the guy's question, I'd be comparing execution plans and seeing what I could do to get it to use the better execution plan for the rest of the parameter values.
Sounds like a good idea. At what point would you resort to something crazy like plan guides or something else?
When a Microsoft engineer's on site and looking at the system with us. That's when I started using plan guides. He literally was on site for an upgrade for us because it was such a major upgrade. We decided to pay someone to watch me.
Well,
but yeah, I mean, a plan guide or, index hints or any of those option 4, it doesn't matter what you do. A plan guide is just an easy, I shouldn't say it's easy. It's a hard object to put in place because it has so many requirements that doing the optimized for trick or the index hint trick in the actual query can be easier. Plan guide is just another object that has those options in it.
Sounds good.
Richie,
sometimes I do parameter sniffing.
Yeah, sometimes I just, depending on the query, just have it recompile every time, and just let it do it, and it gets automatically gets better.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I need to put more effort into that, if that's not the solution, then so be it. But I think sometimes, especially when I'm doing the time performance tuning, we need to have that exit goal. Okay, at what point is good enough? Because I could spend another week on this problem,
right.
but I sometimes the fastest, easiest way is really maybe not be the best way, but it's the way that meets the requirement to get out of the performance tuning.
Yeah, what big thing for me with the parameter sniffing is always making sure that my indexes are lined up so that SQL doesn't have an option between too many different plans. Like Tara ran into a weird one where it was, the same everything in the query on one server. It shows a totally different index and everything from a query on another server. But for me, if it's just happening on one server, then I'm most concerned that it's choosing like a weird key lookup plan where it should be choosing like, a different plan. You got to get rid of that key lookup to get the same shape plan in place.
Yeah.
There's a long question there from Ian. I think that's a Tara question. So if you want to read that and answer that in the background, I'll get to something else. Jay has a follow-up question about Azure. Do you have similar experience of the features that don't work? No, I don't touch Azure. I don't want to touch Azure. I don't want to be around Azure. I'll take Amazon RDS and have like a complete list of stuff that doesn't work and isn't compatible, that's pretty stable over time.
Yeah, I think that's what gets kind of people, and especially in the Microsoft community, kind of confused about us is that we're pretty agnostic about the cloud. I do a lot of work in AWS. We obviously wrote the white papers for Google Cloud, SQL Server in there, Azure. I dabble in Azure, but by far I use AWS more than the other two. So we could give you a big general idea, but when we get to some of those specifics, we haven't really dived into some of those probably outside of Google Cloud and AWS, which I think surprises
Mhm.
some of our more Microsofty type followers.
Yeah, just Azure has just kind of been weird from the get-go, and we tried to get our lab set up in Azure the way we have it set up in AWS a long time back, and after 3 days of, I think, Jeremiah, who's smart, doing stuff in Azure, he said, I don't know. I throw my hands up. We're just going to use AWS. So there's that.
Yeah, I think what it feels like, Azure has this kind of enterprisey security layer that they've kind of put in their cloud, where AWS doesn't really have that.
There's a portal and a beta
Yeah.
portal and a preview portal and then PowerShell. This is like, I don't know what to do with
Yeah,
it.
when I'm messing with Azure, I'm always, messaging our Microsoft community guys, like, well, how do I do this? How do I do that? Well, at AWS, you do this, but how would I do that over there? And typically AWS is just, it's a little simpler to get into and out of, as opposed to Azure. There's steps that there's layers upon layers that you've kind of have to go through.
Donkey.
Yeah, it's peculiar. I would definitely say it's definitely peculiar. But not to say that it's bad. It's just that it's additional steps to kind of have to go through in general to get stuff done.
I would agree. Gregory asks if we have any good resource, or any references or thoughts on column store indexes. I sent a link out into chat to a website from a fellow named Nico Neubauer. I believe that's how you pronounce it. I can be 100% on that. But it's nikoport.com. And he has been writing for years and years about column store, and he has more good thoughts on it than I do. As far as order of columns, a number of columns, that doesn't matter in column store the way it does with row store indexes. For non-clustered, there are obviously some limits on, I think, column length at this point. I'm not sure if you can have max column types in there just yet. I think I read some. Oh no, that was Hackathon. Yeah, because when I go to column store of 5, my Stack Overflow database, I always have to ditch the body column from the post table. So it does have some limitations, but as far as the number of and the order of the number, and you can't column store index a computed column either. It's another funny thing. So there are limitations. I would let the limitations guide me more than some arbitrary number, though. Tara, did you want to answer that long question about the always on stuff?
From Ian?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So Ian is saying he's only DBA. Company's large enough to need another DBA and asked to train an emergency backup for our main instance. They've got always on, analysis services, integration service, reporting services. They've got everything apparently. Trainee's knowledgeable on SQL Server, but it's another office. He'll be remote and in his second language. So he's asking, how to train this person. The guy Ian asking the question, has been doing it for 8 years and hasn't documented. It sounds exactly like what I've had to do it in the past. I am not a documenter, that's for sure. Everything I store is in my head, and if people need to learn it, they're gonna have to ask me, because I don't write stuff down. So I've had to train people in the past. It's one time when I was going on maternity leave for 3 months, and we hired a consultant to replace me while I was gone. So I had to get that person up to speed on, it was like 5 years worth of knowledge of performance to troubleshooting performance issues in production, and that's hard to do because it's so specific to applications at time. So anyways, what worked well for us is shadowing. And I realize that this other person's remote, but you can do a WebEx session or go to webinar, Skype, whatever your Google Hangouts or whatever, and share your screen. Talk through everything that you're doing for 1 to 2 hours per day. Don't do a whole day, because that's just going to burn everybody out. But share your screen and talk with the person. What are you doing day to day? Because that's really what they need to know is day to day. And also talk about the things that come up as emergencies. What are the types of things? And have that person be responsible for documenting it going forward. And that'll be part of their training. Writing it down.
Sounds good to me. Susie asks if she can. Well, I'm going to assume that Susie is a she. Susie is quite a gal's name. Can I create a listener for an existing always-on availability group during the day, or do I need to wait for after hours? Can it cause any issues?
I mean, you certainly can. Will it cause any issues? Probably this one time it will cause an issue. So, I would run the command, later in the day. But you should be able to add a listener without an issue. There's just, weird things happen when you're working in production. It's just, you're rolling the dice.
Yeah, I mean, I would always opt to do stuff like that, later or during a maintenance window. But, creating a listener just seems like one of those sort of like nebulous things where it's like, okay, I'm going to create this and then nothing's going to actually use it until I tell it to. So what could it, it's not like,
in theory, that's how things should work. But, I don't know about everyone else, but I have bad luck in production.
So, Susie, the verdict is it'll probably be okay, but you probably also want to wait. James asks, do you have a health server checklist template? Now, James, you've been in office hours a lot. You've been to our training. You've been to our online training. You should have our first responder kit with the setup checklist in it, James. I know you have the first responder kit. I would definitely want to download, if you don't have it handy, download that and look for this setup checklist. It's a PDF. It's not really a template, but it's a check. But you can go through and check things off as you go, make sure that it's all done. Other than that, our healthy server template is running SP Blitz, making sure that nothing crazy
there you
comes
go.
there. So those are our versions of healthy server checklist templates. JH says, I have a bunch of sleeping connections not doing anything for days. Are these connections taking up resources, or are there any negative impacts? Is it good to kill these connections on a daily basis? What reasons to kill them or not to kill them? Well, off the top of my head, I can give you a good reason not to. Now, I'm going to pop a long command in there for SP who is active that's going to give you a bunch of information about what a query has been up to. If you run that and you see that one of those sleeping transactions has a bunch of tran log writes, and it also has, and it's also blocking it. You might also see it blocking something. If you see it has a bunch of tran log writes, just know that if you kill it, it may have to roll back whatever transaction log stuff it wrote out. So a good reason not to just kill them is that you may have an unforeseen rollback. A good reason to kill them, they might be blocking stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, if these sleeping connections don't have an open transaction and they aren't blocking anything, I don't bother killing them. They aren't using many resources. They're using a teeny bit of resources. I don't know, like it's like 8K of memory or something like that. You likely have sleeping connections due to connection pooling. So applications will go out and connect to a server and say that the app admin has configured to go ahead and do 200 connections, but maybe you have only 50 connections are needed. Those 200 connections are still going to be there, and if you go ahead and kill them, the app's just going to recreate those 150 connections again. So take a look at your system. What are those sleeping connections doing, and do you have connection pooling in place? Talk to your WebOps people and see what number they have configured for the pool.
There's a task I need to set up. Pooling. It was on my list.
Get
I
on
forgot
that.
about it. Yeah.
Let's see here. Oh, there was a fun question. Where did that question go? There was a fun question that I wanted to ask.
I'll let you find it. How about Renee's question that just came in? Would you
Sure.
recommend to use a fill factor of 100% for indexes, or would you go with a different value? I like that question.
0. I would absolutely go with 0. I think 0 is the way you need to go.
0 and 100 are equivalent when we're talking about fill factor. So he is still right. Default to 100%. Don't change it at the instance level. You need to take it by case basis. If you're talking about GUIDs and you're trying to avoid page splits, then maybe reduce your fill factor. But don't just, the recommendation is to keep your fill factor at 100%, except when fill factors, or except when page splits are a problem, like as is the case with GUIDs. But yeah, I had a client a few weeks ago that said that they had lowered the fill factor from 100% down to 75, 80. There were some like that said 78 or some weird number, and it was because that they had encountered page splits years ago, and that was causing problems. And I was like, well, is it causing problems now because your reads probably are slower with these lower fill factors? And it's just not something they realize, that read performance goes down when you lower your fill factor down. Yeah, it helps out with your inserts to avoid page splits, but usually select performance is way more critical than the inserts, updates, and deletes, because the selects are what users are using generally.
I think that's kind of a tough thing in general to try to figure out is, at what point do I stop optimizing prematurely, right? What is going to be a good median to say, hey, this is a good performance tuning, whatever I do to start off with, versus this is a problem now and I need to go and fix it.
Yeah.
The stupid thing about fill factor for me anyway is, it's like one of the first thing is like it's introducing like enforced fragmentation into your indexes. You're leaving a certain amount of empty space in there that SQL is going to have to read and store on disk and in memory. The second thing about fill factor for me is that when it's not maintained on insert, update, and delete. It's only enforced when you rebuild your index. So like in between rebuilds, your index will probably do better on page splits, but unless you rebuild your index fairly frequently, all those new pages, all those split pages, they're just going to fill up to 100% and split again. So it's like one of those like, oh, well, I chose a 70% fill factor for my GUIDs, and well, I still have lots of page splits because all these new pages are getting split. So like you would have to be, out of your mind to just constantly rebuild an index to try and put that back in place. So I usually just leave fill factor somewhere between 90 and 100 and then just never bother with it again. I prefer 100 because then I don't have to change anything. But
yeah, 5 is usually a bad idea. So
yeah, 5 is terrible.
If you're considering that, don't
use a fill factor of 5 unless you're doing a fragmentation demo. And then this might be an okay idea.
Unless you want to call us later and then we'll explain to you why that's a bad idea.
Yeah, I can do that in like 2 words. All right. I found the question that I thought was interesting. It was from Ben. Oh, God, but it ran away from me now. What's the best way to convince someone that a new index with every field as an include is not necessarily a good thing?
I know that you and Brent will say that when you have it, when we see a client that has maybe the key is fine, but then they have 48 includes, to go ahead and chop off the includes and check out the performance of the query, let it do a key lookup to the clustered index, or also test it with the covering index with all of those includes. Now, of course, the key lookup version is going to be slower, but is the perf difference between the two
Well,
so
depends
different?
on the query. If it's if it's doing a single primary lookup or something, then I don't care if it does a 1 key lookup for 40 columns. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Right.
So when it does like thousands, hundreds of thousands of them, I'm like, oh, not the key lookups.
When you're looking at the missing indexes, and there's a missing index with, say, 48 includes, do you go ahead and recommend that when it has a really high benefit per day? Do you go ahead and recommend that index, or do you chop off the includes for them?
I vary a little bit on that. If I can track down the query that's asking for it, and I look at this query and I say, do you need this query as it lives and breathes? And they say, yes, we cannot change this query. We need this query as it lives and breathes. And I say, okay, then you need this index to make this query better. You can try it with just the key columns first and see how that does. Or you can go for the whole kit and caboodle and see, and just take the hit on having 48 includes in there. But if I can't find that query and ask them those questions, then I'll just give them the choice of key columns versus key columns plus includes, and then just monitor how it gets used in Blitz Index.
Yeah, when I start off with an index, it's usually the key columns that I need, and then the actual clustered key inside the includes, and then that's it. I put the clustering key in there just in case someone changes that later. It's not going to do anything, right? And then as we start going on, and hey, there's a performance problem here or there, that's when I'll start throwing includes on top of that, and not just let's throw everything in there. So I've gotten this really big index now for no reason. I've got no queries running up against it. It's just taking up space. It's on disk. It's just taking up space in memory. why is all this stuff there? So I don't put includes in there until I need it. That's it. Hello? Hello?
I can still hear you. Sorry.
Oh.
My
No, I was talking to Chris on the phone. That was
Oh, no. I was just trying to make sure the ringing stopped. Sorry.
stop.
All right. Well, we have hit the 12:46 mark. I don't see any other questions pouring in that I can answer. So I think we should call it an office hours. What do you guys say?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Cool. Take care, everyone. Thanks for showing up. We will see
Thank
you
you.
next week. Goodbye.